For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:06 on CJAD 800. Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar. Josh Miller of Fuller Landau is unfortunately off for our last show of the year, so in his stead, we have Michael Newton of Fuller Landau. How's it going, Mike?
Good, Dan. How are you?
Excellent. And tonight we're focusing, it's another one of our new theme shows, and this one's pretty interesting because a lot of entrepreneurs are in this position right now, especially after the recession. We're talking about one-man shows, and with us in studio, we have our returning champion. He's back every season, Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton. You'll know and love the cookies. Hi, Michael.
Good evening, gentlemen.
And we also have Robert Shustack of Danvin here, also a one-man operation. Mr. Shustack, welcome to today's Entrepreneur.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
So first, I think, Michael, we all know what Felix and Norton is about. We've heard the story. We'll get to that in a bit. But first, perhaps, Robert, if you could introduce yourself to CJAD and to today's Entrepreneur and let us know what Danvin is all about.
Danvin's a food importer and distributor in Canada. We have the rights. I have the rights for various brands, U.S. brands for Canada. Most of my business is selling to retailers, the large retailers in Canada, Sobeys, Walmart, Metro, people like that. And a little bit of my business is selling to food service.
And Michael, for those that aren't aware, I'm sure many are, what is Felix and Norton all about?
Well, we're a cookie company that started almost 29 years ago with one store in Montreal and grew into many stores and now has diverged into, diversified into cookie dough and cakes that are in your local IGA store.
And so, Mike, we're going to talk about one-man operations. And is this the kind of thing that you're seeing more often at Fuller Landau, especially in recent years?
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to see the one-man operations, and we'll, before somebody calls in and calls me sexist, we'll say one man because both of the gentlemen in here tonight are both men. So I think one of the things we see a lot of is the one man, but the reality is, and Robert and I were talking about this before, there's no such thing as a one-person operation. I mean, it may be one person on payroll, but between the network of people that you're having, whether it's sales reps, whether it's some of your key suppliers, whether it's some of the key customers, there's always going to be a very hot circle of people around you in order to get things done. So just because you may be working out of your basement or you may be on the road by yourself doesn't mean you're standing out on an island all by yourself. But when it comes to dollars and cents at the end of the day, there's no doubt that you're the one holding the bag. So.
And gentlemen, did you always know that you were going to be the head of a one-man operation, or did it just sort of work out that way?
In my case, it evolved that way. At the very beginning, I opened a store and had half a dozen employees. It grew to a chain of 45 stores, and there were probably close to 300 people that I was responsible for, some employees, some franchisees, some of their employees, but it was a very large organization. And then my business went through other changes, some difficulties, and now it's been reborn as a one-man organization.
And Robert?
No, actually I started off after I graduated with an MBA. I went into the family business, which was a retail business of men's clothing. And I thought that was going to be my opportunity. And we had about 18 stores at the time. My father's had 18 stores. And but it became a very challenging environment, the men's clothing industry. The sales were declining in the industry as a whole. It was a contracting industry. And then I I transitioned to purchasing the assets of the business from my father. And but then about 4 years after that, realized there wasn't a future in the men's clothing business for me. So transitioned from there. I started up a .com company in '96, and with the bursting of the bubble in 2000, that didn't work out either. So definitely had some challenges in the years prior. But I think you learn a lot from bad experiences, from mistakes, things like that. And that's what led me into kind of reassessing what type of business I want to get into and what I thought were my strengths and weaknesses. And I found myself then putting together a short list of companies that I wanted. But I did know that I wanted to be my own boss and entrepreneur. That's what I always was. And so I got into the food distribution business.
If you take a step back and you go, as you mentioned, you started in retail, in the family business, you've pretty much always been an entrepreneur.
Correct.
Right? From pretty much out of MBA school.
Correct.
There's no doubt that what you experienced in that environment, if you go from men's retail to .com to food distribution, there's not a lot of similarities in the product, but do you find there's a lot of similarities in your entrepreneurial style, what you've learned? We're all a product of where we've been, but how much of that hasn't changed in all these years?
We're constantly learning. You're constantly evolving as a person, and where I am today and has certainly evolved, and I've learned from all of those experiences. There's not a lot of similarities between retail.com and food distribution. However, I would say to you that probably 80% is the same. 80% of all businesses are the same thing. You either acquire some resources, produce something, add some value to it, and resell it, and hopefully you make enough profit between what you sell it for and what it costs you, and that's what business is. For me, it wasn't that difficult transitioning and reinventing myself over each of those occasions.
Michael, from your perspective, you started out working for somebody, or a couple of people, I guess, in different environments to go off onto your own. I mean, obviously, I'll ask you the same question. From whence you came, going back to the original side of what you saw. How much of what you learned back then do you still carry forward and still remember, other than some of the rough experiences?
Well, I learned so much about business from working for other entrepreneurs, and I know that when I first started, I was driven by, I don't want to be like them, I want to do it my way, the right way. But as time went on, I realized how many things I learned from them and how many good things that the other people I worked for had taught me.
Okay. There's no doubt that I don't think it's different even if you look at the professional services environment. You take the young ones that are coming along and you tell them to pick the good from Michael, pick the good from Robert, pick the not so good from Michael, pick the not so good for Robert, and become your own person. And I think those that end up succeeding are those that have had the ability to sort through the good and the bad and make their own persona at the end of the day. So it's interesting to see how despite the fact that both of you started in the rag trade, in retail, and you've come full circle again to be in food. It's an interesting environment, but I think shall we say, the road to those are going to be quite different. I think when we come back a little bit later, we'll have a quick chat about the fork in the road that I think both of you have dealt with.
Sure, and we'll ask you, if you were to do it all over again, would you also continue to be one-man, one-person entrepreneurs? So in studio with us on today's Entrepreneur this evening, it's our special theme show on one-man operations, one-person operations. Just the two in studio happen to be men, so we're calling it one-man operations. Robert Shustack of Danvin and Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton. Michael Newton is here as well from Fuller Landau. 7:19, and welcome back to today's Entrepreneur. Our inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar along with Fuller Landau's Mike Newton filling in for Josh this week. And we're talking about one-person operations, one-man operations in this case, with Robert Shustack of Danvin and Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton. Guys, do you ever miss not having some employees around to help you out?
I certainly do sometimes. One of the things that I miss is when I have major opportunities or major projects that I'm working on, I miss having my team around me. I do have other people. I have friends. I have my accountant and other advisors that I can discuss things with. But
your lovely wife as well.
And of course, yes. But I do miss when I had a chief financial officer who would help me with the numbers, and a marketing guy who would help me visualize the project. And I end up wearing all the hats myself. And sometimes that's fun. A lot of the time that's fun, but sometimes it's I miss that assistance. I also miss having gophers. So when there's a Joe job to do, as it might be called, I end up having to do it because there isn't anyone else to delegate it to.
And Robert, do you ever fantasize about having help around the house or help around the business?
Well, it's a bit of a misnomer to say that I'm a one-man operation in the sense, while I don't have an employee on the payroll, I have a large network of people that I work with and work for me, but it's just under a contract basis. So I have sales reps who are independent sales agents across Canada. And in the food business, they're known as brokers, and they represent not just my line, but maybe typically a dozen other food lines. But I'm on the phone with them almost every day, and we're discussing sales strategies and which account to contact and what the presentation should be. And I spend a lot of my time preparing presentations for them. I'll go to the customers with them for the first sales call, but then they'll do the follow-ups. So there's a lot of that interaction that goes on. I work with an independent communications agency for any marketing-related things, whether it's website or other packaging or whatever. My logistics is all outsourced through third-party warehousing and common carriers. So, I can offer to my customers warehousing and delivery from coast to coast, but it's not my physical premises. I don't have a lease on a premises. I don't employ truck drivers. So it's a very fluid situation, very flexible kind of business for me. But yet, there's still a whole host of people that I'm networking with and talking with on a daily basis.
So 'tis the season. We're going to do a little bit of, a flashback. So we'll use a piece from Scrooge, and not that I'm implying either one of you is, but ghosts of entrepreneurs past. There's no doubt that Robert, at one point you had 120 employees in a previous life. Michael, you had up to 300 employees that you were responsible for. Now you guys are responsible for yourselves. Maybe give us a little bit of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and why you're happy to not have the employee base at this point.
For me, it's only been good. I love not having that, the employees that, and the fixed, from a business point of view, the fixed cost associated with those employees, and but just the quality of life that it gives me, not having to deal with all the issues of employees on a daily basis. I find that it's when you're dealing with salespeople on a contract basis, they're very professional salespeople who they go about their business. They're motivated to sell because they're working on a commission, and it's only been good for me. I also looked for a business that I thought was very simple. I think keep it simple is really a key, and I found that in the food distribution business. So for me, it was also a quality of life issue.
Michael?
Well, I mean, as I said earlier, there's some things about employees that I miss, but I certainly, from a business point of view, from the cost standpoint, it is certainly a blessing and much easier and simpler to run the business without employees. Our businesses are quite similar. I'm in food distribution as well, so it is a relatively simple, straightforward business that can be run by one person. It doesn't need that whole team, and I also have brokers that help me, and communication specialists and different advisors that I can count on that fill out the team. But it is hard to work alone, and I miss the company.
Well, there's no doubt the overhead component of running a rather large structure, whether it be fixed cost, whether it be the salary base, is onerous. You asked me earlier, Dan, in terms of seeing a lot more people that coming out as the one-person shows. I think there's no doubt that what you're seeing a lot more of is people trying to get away from managing a lot of people.
We'll talk about office life, or in this case, home office life, after the break with our guest, Robert Shustack of Danvin, and Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton. It's our one-man theme show here on Today's Entrepreneur, 725. 728, welcome back, and our guest Robert Shustack of Danvin, Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton. So this is our one-man show. And quickly, guys, before news, I want to get just a lighter question in here. Your home is your office, right? Now, do you find that you are more productive because of that, because you're working at home, or less productive? I mean, personally, I find it I tend not to work at home these days, but it's what are your thoughts?
I find it to be very productive because the real difficulty is separating work and home life, because they overlap a lot, but I can work when I want and play when I want, and as long as I get it done, I'm a happy guy.
Same thing, very productive. I've always been very task or project driven, so if I'm up at 5 in the morning, I can get work done. If I want to take off and go play a game of golf and then come back and work till 10 at night, there's no problem. It's, whenever you want to work and get something done, you can do it.
I have a problem working from home as well, but I think, Dan, I figured it out listening to everybody here. You and I are yet to reach that level of maturity and discipline, which is what it takes, I think, to be able to work from home so that you're not walking around in your slippers and your sweatshirt all afternoon. That's
probably true. I like working around other people because they keep me honest. I have to look productive, which makes me productive.
That's old school. Old school.
Coming up after the break, we'll talk more about one-person shows. Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton is here, and Robert Shustack of Danvin. It's coming up to 7:30 on CJAD. Let's get the latest in news right now with Kelly LaParry. 7:35. Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, and our guests on our one-man show special is Robert Shustack of Danvin and Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton. Mike Newton is here from Fuller Landau, filling in for Josh this week. Mike, nice to see you again.
Good to see you, Dan. A little shout out to Josh, even though I can't do his hello in a deep voice that he normally does.
And so let's talk about building your brands solo, and or not solo, but certainly I guess you guys are making the executive decisions alone. You're your own. VPs of marketing and HR and finance, and you're running the whole operation yourself. Do you find it's been has working on your own given you some clarity, perhaps, in developing your various brands? Sort of cuts out the clutter and the noise, or do you lean on outside people more to develop those brands?
In my case, my brands are licensed. I have the rights for Canada for a brand. So, for example, Simply Potatoes is one of my brands, which is found, I might as well give it a plug, in all of the IGA stores in Quebec in the produce section, right beside the bag salads, as well as in the Walmart stores, same place. So this is an existing brand from the U.S., the marketing strategy had already been developed. The consumer advertising they do in print and online spills over into Canada. So I didn't have to reinvent the wheel for these brands. And that was part of my decision into getting the rights for established brands for Canada, that I wouldn't have to do it. That being said, there's always trade types of communications that have to be done. New packaging has to be done. So that I and the communications agency that I use develop the expertise in doing that. But as of yet, I have not had to create a new brand myself.
In my case, it's trying to keep the brand relevant, keep it top of mind. I mean, once again today, I bumped into somebody who said to me, "Oh, Felix and Norton, you guys still around?" And so the real challenge is making people remember us and think of us, because there's a lot of good products out there. So it's what I work on every day is how do I get people to go into IGA and buy some more cookie dough or some one of our cakes.
But I think, Robert, despite the fact that you were bringing in a known brand south of the border, I mean, obviously the retail space has changed dramatically in the last 15 years. If you look at what you had to put in to bring a new product north of the border 11 years ago or 12 years ago when you started, is there any difference today trying to bring something to market? I mean, obviously the social media and the online world is so much bigger. There's so much more of a global approach. Do you still have a niche? Do you still have a similar approach?
Yes, in my case, it's still similar in that most of the products that I would bring in, my my role and my strategy would be more of a push strategy, push marketing strategy. So I would focus more on trade promotions, participating in store flyers, couponing, in-store demos, that type of thing. It's the supplier or the producer out of the U.S. that is my supplier that'll be responsible for the pull part of the marketing strategy, the direct-to-consumer advertising and that. Okay. So, and I do that consciously because it mitigates the resources that I have to expend into the marketing strategy. My suppliers, fortunately, are billion-dollar companies in the U.S. They have the resources to do the pull part of the strategy.
But from the push side, I mean, you made it sound so easy and getting in flyers and doing this and doing that. But, you know, dumb it down for some of us, I guess, in terms of what that means.
Well, it means working very closely with your customers. And you know, one thing that's never changed in business is giving a product. First of all, I have two customers. I have the customer I sell to, who's the retailer, and then there's the end consumer, and both have to be satisfied. So for the end consumer, they have to have a terrific product at a great price that is convenient for them and of high quality, and that's what I look for in products. And by the same token, for my immediate customer, who's the retailer, I have to give them a product that they can be proud of and make money off of. Mm-hmm. And I learned very quickly in the food retailing business that the easy, I shouldn't say the easy part, only the first step is getting on the shelf. And that could be a challenge in and of itself. But after that, the product has to move off the shelf. Consumers have to come in, have to buy it, have to come back to buy it. So you have to help that retailer devise a strategy whereby they will keep moving product off the shelf. So that's where you'll sit down with the category manager and you'll plan out a program for the coming year of promotions and flyers and coupons and demos and different things like that. And, you know, I've been fortunate to have good, solid products that, you know, consumers keep coming back for and keep buying.
The retail space, obviously the food retail space in this country is limited in terms of the number of big players. Michael, if you look at trying to move your product, similar to what Robert's saying, in terms of getting yourselves into the store, how many people are you talking to? Are you talking to one buyer? Are you talking to buyer in different locations?
Well, the strategy that we use to really get our products going in retail, since we didn't have the deep pockets of a billion-dollar manufacturer behind us, we gave an exclusive deal to IGA, so it was the only place you could get our cookie dough. And in exchange for that, IGA put a lot of their own energy behind it and helped us a lot with the flyers, with in-store promotions, with demos, so that people could actually taste a fresh warm cookie in a store and know that it was there.
So you use the retail on the push-pull as opposed to the ability Robert was talking about being the manufacturer who was actually doing.
Exactly.
All right. If you were to do it all over again, this point, both of you, in terms of rolling the products out, are you happy with the way it's gone? I mean, obviously, there's always room for improvement, but has it been working well to your satisfaction?
Well, there's been some very good times, and but you can never sit back, not for a minute, and that's why I'm working very hard with some great people on redoing our packaging for next year, launching some new products. There's always got to be something new, and that the world is going faster and faster and faster. So, what things that could last for a few years now last for a year or 6 months, and it's time to redo it.
We'll take a quick break in a second. Coming up next, Mike, we're going to talk to Nick Moretus of Fuller Landau, and he's going to give some advice to our one-person entrepreneurs about taxes, of course. He's a tax partner there. Insurance, I think, is on the menu, and whether or not to incorporate. So if you are a one-man show, stay tuned, and Nick will have some great tips for you. And joining us in studio is Robert Shustack of Danvin and Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton, with his cookies, of course. Thanks, Michael, for that. It's coming up to 7:45 right now. You can help make sick kids' dreams come true with CJAD's 12.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:49, and welcome back to today's Entrepreneur. It's our one-person show, our special with Robert Shustack of Danvin and Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton. Mike Newton is here, filling in for Josh from Fuller Landau, and also from Fuller is Nick Moretus, tax partner there. So let's talk, Nick, how we can help out these two gentlemen and others who have one-person operations, because you become your own CFO in a sense. So it's important to keep tabs in a lot of areas. Where would you like to begin tonight?
Well, where you're looking at a solo entrepreneur, usually the first question we get asked is, do I need to incorporate? There's nothing obliging you to incorporate. You can become an unincorporated entrepreneur. You register your business, and you're off and running. You open up a bank account, keep the bank account a bit separate from your personal, and you're off. You're simple. There's the bookkeeping is a little easier. The financial production of information is easier. It's an extra couple of forms on your own personal tax return, and off you're going. But there's certain advantages and disadvantages, and we have to look at that. Obviously, one is tax. I mean, in Canada, most of what we do, there's a tax element behind it. So corporations are advantaged a bit when it comes to income tax. If you're making, say your profit at the end of the year is around $100,000, and that basically becomes your salary as a solo entrepreneur. Well, at $100,000, you're probably average tax somewhere in the mid-30s to high 30s in terms of what you're going to be paying out in tax, plus the social costs. A corporation on that level is only paying tax at about 19%. So all of a sudden, you're starting to look and saying, "Oh, wait a second, I get this tax advantage here." Now, obviously, you need to live, and you got to take out money, etc. So that's what we tend to turn around and look at: is how much money do you make? How much money do you need to live? But there's other tax advantages. If it's just you, yourself, and I, that $100,000 that I was talking about, or it could be $50,000, or it could be $200,000, is basically yours. You can hire a family member and pay them a salary, or you can incorporate and have the company hire your family member and pay them a salary. But they have to be doing something. If they're just at home looking at you, then you should not be paying them a salary. But there's other means to income split that as a solo entrepreneur you can't do, but with a corporation you can. You can bring in your family as shareholders. There they can sit at home and watch you work, and you can pay them a dividend if you so choose, and that the government will accept that is their dividend because this is a business. One other little advantage is if you're also taking into debt. So let's say you need to buy equipment, you go to the bank, you get a small business loan, I understand, which is about $250,000. Well, if you owe the bank now $250,000 and you have to pay it out over, say, 5 years, and you're not incorporated, that means you're making that $100,000 say net profit at the end of the day. You're going to have to pay, say, 38 cents of tax, keep the leftover money to pay off your bank loan, because that you can't write off against your taxes. But a business, if you're in an incorporated business, you only pay 19% tax, and you got 81 cents available to help you pay off the bank loan. So that bank loan, getting it paid off, is a lot easier if you're an incorporated business.
Yeah, I think the one question, I think, when you go back to the beginning is always, do I incorporate or not? And it's funny because you'll say, guys will say, well, how much are you going to make? Well, how much you're going to make is relative, I think, to how much you're actually going to spend. And I think that's, Nick, when you allude to that point, is the question of if you're going to make $100,000 and you're going to need $100,000 to live, you're not paying 19% tax because you got to get it out to yourself.
Absolutely. But with a corporation, there's opportunities that we don't have as a solo, because that opportunity could be paying dividends to other family members who are shareholders, which you do not have as a choice if you're a solo entrepreneur, and that's something that we do have to look at. But there's also non-tax reasons why we need corporations, and one of the biggest ones is as an unincorporated entrepreneur, you're on the hook for everything that goes wrong with that business. If you just, unfortunately, with all the best plans, with all the best efforts, with all the best advice, if the business just doesn't go, or you lose money in the initial years, you're funding it. It's your personal assets are now out there open for anyone to come in and attack and get payment for something you did at the business. So your RSPs are open to your creditors. Your house, if it's in your name, are open to your creditors. The cash you have in your bank account or your car is open to your creditors. A corporation provides a shield. And that shield could be limited if you're dealing with a bank who wants to give you a loan and wants personal guarantees. But to the business world, to the creditors out there, to your suppliers, and to anybody else who wants to come after you, your limit is basically, if I put in a certain sum of money into my incorporated business, that is my money at risk. That's my money that I will lose, but at least I get a chance to protect everything else that I have, which is a big enough sometimes reason for a corporation that it tips the balance. I'm borderline on the tax perspective. My spouse works. My kids are way too young, so I can't share anything with them. But the liability is important.
More with Nick, and also some advice for other solo entrepreneurs from our guest. That's next on Today's Entrepreneur.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back. Remaining moments. Nick Moraitis, a couple very quick points. Advice for solo entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I just want to finish off with that liability protection that we were talking about. It was not just against business losses as well. It was against product issues. If you could make the best product, but sometimes it doesn't always work out. Someone sues you for lots of money, you're protected better in a company. The last point I have is for those who do start out unincorporated, you can incorporate your business afterwards. But one thing I do suggest, don't just stop doing what you're doing in your name and start doing something in incorporation. The government will look at that you sold your business to your company. There could be taxes. There's a means to do it, but you can incorporate it afterwards.
Robert Shustack, your one piece of advice for today's one-man entrepreneur?
You're never one man in reality. You have to count on many people for good advice, and that's everything from family and friends who can offer good advice to getting good professional advice, and that's important. And I use Fuller, so I'll give you guys a plug. And it is important to surround yourself with suppliers and people that work with you and get that advice to keep improving.
Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton?
I really echo what Robert said. It's very key to have good people around you, whether they be your family members, whether they be advisors, people who understand you and you can relate to, who can really help you achieve the goals you set for yourself.
Well, I'll say that there's no difference watching listening to the one person operation. I think the key under there is the entrepreneur, and whether it's a large organization with multi-employees or not. 3 factors are always going to be key: passion, execution, and mindfulness. I think if you can carry those 3 qualities with you, I think you're going to succeed, whether you're one person or 100 people.
Very good, and thanks to our one-person operations, Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton, Robert Shustack of Danvin, and of course the guys from Fuller Landau, Mike Newton. Thanks for filling in for Josh this week, and Nick Moraitis as well. We're back on the 27th of January, so taking a few weeks off for the holidays. Josh will be back then, so join us for more of Today's Entrepreneur, usually on Monday nights here at 7 p.m. on CJAD 800. The Exchange with Matt Gurney is next. It's 8 o'clock.